for Business is presented by Globe My Business. Create your success.
We are open for business, and we are here with the CEO and founder of Rumaraket, Kathleen Paige. Kathleen, thank you very much
Thank you.
for
I'm glad
coming.
to be here.
Okay, so it's very exciting that we have you came over because there's a lot of discussions about the struggles of startups, and I've learned from your profile that even at a very young age, you encountered these struggles already, and somehow it's one of the most profitable startups, and you are actually a market challenger. So I'm very interested, and even our viewers are very interested to know, how did you start this startup first?
Well, actually, my startup began as a thesis proposal to my professor. What happened was she believed that it was impractical at that time, and I didn't believe her. So what I did was I got some advice from a professor in MIT to basically look at my paper and see if there was anything practical in there. So basically, within a few months, we were able to turn it into a business and basically got funding from there.
Okay, you said your teacher in the Philippines said it was impractical, and then you approached this MIT professor,
Yes.
and then he or she saw the potential in it. Do you remember what was that sense of practicality, of your thesis during that time?
I think at that time it was because the concept was something that hadn't been heard before. Basically, we at Rumaraket, we build AI to understand human behavior. So what we do is we develop these models, and we have companies, we implement it for certain companies, and basically the theory of it was, can you predict how people would behave given a certain motivation, given a certain incentive? And can you basically develop an AI that can look at human behavior and predict, for example, if an employee is taking too many vacation days, are they about to leave? If there's certain changes in performance, how does it affect the productivity of the employee? How can you determine whether this employee who's being paid a certain salary or that employee who's being paid twice that amount, who of them is more productive in the organization?
So it's not only some sort of a recruitment tool, but it's also some sort of an HR development software.
Well, our philosophy really was, when we first started, my philosophy going into this was, good people make good companies. In the same way, great people define what a great company is. So if you think about it, people are the forefront of what makes companies productive and amazing. And what I wanted to do was to build tools to understand these people and to get the best out of them. So we have basically a recruitment module, we have one for retention, we have one for talent management, leadership and succession planning, and so on.
So in short, okay, let's go back now to the beginnings. You said you approached MIT, and then what happened next?
Basically, he told me to pursue it and gave me some advice. And what I did was I pitched the beginnings of an idea in Startup Weekend, Manila. And there was a lot of good feedback, so I thought that it would make sense to pursue it as a business. So within, I think, 2 or 3 weeks, we got funded from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in short, the first struggle that you mentioned is like people not believing in your idea, correct? Correct, because if they believed in your idea, they would immediately, support you. But in your case, the first struggle is, your professor, would tell you it's not impractical, but you were not discouraged and you pursued it. So what other struggles have you encountered? Because I also learned from your profile that somehow you had a team with you in the early phases, but after that you finally saw yourself alone in it.
Well, what happens when people start a business is they think it's like the social network.
Okay.
Like Mark Zuckerberg and this wonderful story about starting from nothing and becoming the next Facebook. But the realities are actually a lot different. One of the challenges we had early on was our first version of the product failed. We had a big launch event, but the feedback that we got from the people we were talking to wasn't very good. And what happened afterwards was my co-founders at that time decided to stop pursuing the idea.
I see. So it's like if it were a movie, it was like a flop.
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Yeah.
If it were a movie. So and then.
So what I thought, basically I had a choice at that time whether to get a job or to keep going and to keep pushing through with it. And what basically defined it for me was that if I thought about it, I really didn't see myself doing anything else. I lived for the excitement of doing it, but part of living for the excitement is also accepting the failure and the pain as part of the process. And what I did was I used that failure to basically find out what I was missing in the process and to develop, in startup lingo we call it pivot.
Okay.
So what I did was I pivoted the solutions to basically meet the needs of our customers more effectively.
So when you, so in short, when this launch flopped, you somehow revisited it.
Yes.
And made sure that I'm sure there were a lot of inputs, from different areas or from different people, and how to improve it. And that's the reason why, as you said, you pivoted it.
Yes.
So, what other tools or what other insights did you do to ensure that, like say, some sort of a version 2 of this solution that you are offering worked the second time around?
Well, the second time around, I actually pitched the idea to some venture capitalists in Shanghai. Basically, the accelerator is called China Accelerator, and they were enthusiastic about it. So they invited me over to basically go through a mentorship boot camp session and to improve the product further. So I was lucky in that aspect. But what I basically did as a learning process is I came at it from the standpoint of I don't know what I don't know. So anything new, anything different from the feedback that people were giving me, I would write it down, put it together, and I would discuss it with my team so we could see how we could meet that pain point that the client was communicating.
Oh, but Kathleen, that's another struggle. A lot of startups would definitely not have access or not as lucky as you getting accelerators immediately. So, what's your tip for startups who have great ideas in finding an accelerator?
I think the fundamental thing of why people do startups is to create value. And when you think about creating value, it's really about finding a problem, finding somebody with a really painful experience around that problem, and developing a solution to address that problem. A good example would be the challenges with paying taxes, for example.
Yes.
And basically building a solution that takes away that pain. And in that sense, that's where a business can derive its value. And for me, if that value proposition is clear and coherent, companies would not have trouble finding funding and finding support.
So in your case, so let's go back to the story again. So you went to China, you were mentored there, and I'm sure there are struggles there as well because of culture, language, and if you're dealing with businesses there, I'm sure they have other demands, that would really hinder you again to develop this because of course it was not an idea. Is it an idea that fits in to that specific market, or do you think it was just the initial phase that you have to go through? What happened in China?
We had some good points in China, a lot of interest, but at the same time, when we released the second version of our product, it wasn't quite up to the standard of large Chinese companies yet. And most of the companies there were looking for Chinese translated so they could use it for...
I see, yeah, because especially, with my experience with China when I was with a consulting firm, they have this, how they call it, a great barrier because we can't use Facebook there. I think they have their own, that's a time I was able to use also WeChat and Weibo. So tell me about it. So what happened there? So you said during that time it didn't fit the standards of the larger corporations because of the they want it translated. Is that?
Yeah,
okay.
I had to go back to the drawing board and work on it again. And during that time, I think it was about 2 years later, I flew back to the Philippines and had some interest as well from clients in Hong Kong.
I see. So the struggle there again in China.
It's really finding a product market fit. Because if you think about it, the Chinese market, the Philippine market, even Hong Kong, they have their own needs and they have their own priorities and standards. And when you're developing something that you want to be valuable to them, you basically have to look at what the context is, who are the people you want to build a solution for, what kind of pain points do they have at the moment, and how can your solution address each of those pain points more efficiently than anything existing. So for me, it's a lot of trial and error. So my philosophy throughout it all was really something that in tech we call it beta testing.
Okay.
So I would basically build very small implementations of the product, release it to a few people who I thought would make good clients, see their feedback, and basically keep repeating that process until I had clients who were really interested, who really believed that they could find this useful and implement it into their organization.
And they can even give you inputs on customization,
Of course,
customizing it. Okay, so again, when you were in China, what was that vision, or what was that decision that you had, to tell yourself, okay, it's over here. I have to go back to the Philippines. I have to find other clients, and I have to move on. So how agile would you be? To adjust in environments like that, because of course sometimes if you are in that case, is it what would be the thoughts that should run in your mind to say to yourself that I have to go on, or you have to again pivot in your language?
I think if you tell your story and you talk about your startup to the other person, you can have a lot of indicators already, whether they find it valuable or interesting. What I did was I invited a few people, mentors I trusted, to coffee, discussed what I was doing with them, got their feedback. And over a few meetings, it got me to realize that my product probably wasn't quite ready for this market, and maybe I needed to do more development work to push it out, or to push something better out. So for me, it was really listening to other people, trying to understand where we were at, showing them the product, asking them questions about it, what their thoughts were. So it was a very bloody process. If you
So,
will.
what's your experience in sending this information, sending this inputs to clients, like the ones that finally got you or gave you another finding, or was it a client already in Hong Kong? So, how were you able to really, and I think my question is, how do you find the markets for that would really make use of the product? How do you find them? How do you search them? And what's your engagement to ensure that they will look at the various features of your product?
When I first started, I had two channels.
Okay.
The first one was startup events.
Okay.
Startup business events, because, for example, during HR events, that's when they talk about their biggest pains, what's the challenge of the industry. What I would do is I would wait for coffee break, and then I would approach random people and ask them questions, ask them for a few minutes of their time and get their feedback on the tools. The second one was lots and lots of cold emails.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So I would basically come up with a title I thought was engaging, like increase your sales by implementing AI, and I would send personalized emails to people I think would have a need for my tools, and see if any of them responded. So it took a while, but after I started getting maybe 2 responses, 3 responses, and then a few follow-up meetings, and then after the follow-up meetings, they would pitch it to their bosses, until finally we were able to close clients. So most people, when you ask them what's the difference between like a startup and a small business, when you say startup, it means that you're developing something new, unproven, innovative, and basically you're trying to find whether people would buy it or subscribe to any of your products or services. Small businesses basically have a defined value proposition already. So you're either selling something or you're providing something valuable in terms of services. So for me, the moment we closed our clients was the moment we when we slowly transitioned from
Startup to a small business. So that's interesting. So my question is, when you were trying to, of course, pitch it to a lot of clients, and when you were making these cold emails to a lot of people, what was the response rate? I'm sure when you say there's a lot, but what is that kind of benchmark for startups or small business owners to not really be frustrated?
Well, in marketing, I think 5% is
Yes.
the acceptable one. With us currently, we're at around 20%.
Wow.
So that's a lot better. But
But how? What duration was that period when you somehow get response rates from 5 to 20?
it took basically a year and a half.
Oh, that's still short. You know, that's,
Well, yeah.
I'm sure with that, it may be because of the service that you are offering. Okay.
What helped us well was some successful case studies from small up-and-coming clients. Like, we worked with this up-and-coming company here in the Philippines, and what happened was they had challenges with recruiting their salespeople. So we helped them implement a machine learning algorithm to predict who was going to make sales before they were even hired. So within 6 months of implementing, it turned around, and basically within a year or two, they had like 36,000 times increase in their return on investment.
Wow.
Just-
So you did a market what's this, a case study out of that?
Yes.
Is that also so? In trying to in the implementation phase, what were your struggles? Okay, the second struggle was basically, or the third struggle already was really finding product market fit. Yeah, product market fit. Now, during the implementation phase,
Yeah.
do we have to go to a break before Miss Kathleen responds to this? I'll give you the first question, the last question before we go into break. So, what is the next phase of that after you found that product market fit
Yeah.
is basically implementation.
Yeah.
So okay, can you cite one struggle in the execution phase?
Basically, we like to make plans and say this is how it's gonna go. But when you start implementing, everything falls out the window. So it's basically having to be adaptable and to make decisions like that. So what we found was there were errors where we expected no errors.
Okay.
So what I really advocated with my team was to move fast. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, but also to correct them quickly.
Okay, that's great. Okay, it's a very exciting conversation, and Kathleen will tell us also, she will try to simplify machine learning and artificial intelligence to our viewers when Open for Business returns. Open for Business is back, and still with me is Kathleen Paige, the founder and CEO of Rumaracket.com. Okay, as we mentioned earlier, your idea is something very exciting, especially to large corporations and even new ones, because a lot of people, a lot of businesses are now talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, which to a lot of people is very complex. So can you simplify what artificial intelligence and machine learning is?
Okay. So artificial intelligence and machine learning right now are basically interchangeable terms. What it basically means is you train a computer to learn without being programmed. So for example, with self-driving cars, what happens there is they run a program, and every time that program runs on a car, the car basically learns and gets better. So the current state of machine learning right now, it's very narrow. So most of the use cases and challenges being solved are basically problems that are specific, quantifiable, and basically relatively straightforward. A rule of thumb I usually use is basically AI can help you predict. A good example of that is when you buy something on Amazon or when you're using Netflix, it basically predicts what you're likely to buy next or what you're likely to watch based on what you watched before.
So that's why it can recommend
Yes.
new products or new services to
Yes.
you. Okay, based on your historical orders. Okay.
Second one is optimize, which is what we use every day when we take a Grab, and they use Waze. So they look at all the routes, whether it's traffic in EDSA at this time, and what's the fastest way to get from point A to point B. So
Okay.
that's another good example of machine learning. And then the final one is really to personalize. So you see that when you do Google search and it remembers the things that you search. Similarly with Netflix, if you think about it, each of the customer interactions with Netflix are unique to what they click on. So it really allows a level of personalization that we've never seen before.
But with all these developments, how is back-end doing it? Is there a lot of coding behind it in terms of the three of that prediction, optimization, and personalization? You know, what happens behind? Is there a huge a set of coders doing that task for you?
I'm sure a lot of people have heard the keyword big data.
Okay, yeah.
So right now, actually, what happens is the data is fed into the algorithms to help them get better. In terms of coding, it's not really anything different. I would say the difference in focus is there's a lot more emphasis on statistics and statistical principles as well as calculus, which is basically the basis of these machine learning algorithms. But
I'm getting confused. Okay, go ahead.
not to be relatively technical, it's more of when you think of machine learning, it just marries coding with statistics and a little bit of calculus and data science together to basically develop systems that can predict, optimize, and personalize.
But what's exciting now is that it's scary in the sense that these computers know who you are and know your behavior and predict how you decide. So are we really seeing an era where there's no more need for skills coming from human talent, but a lot of it, as you said, and I heard you talk about it, when you input more data, more information into AI, the better it decides, the better it produces something that would be more accurate.
I think we're reaching a level where jobs are gonna evolve.
Before I don't hear anything about data scientists, but now I think it's one of the key skills that people will be, and that's going to be the future.
Realistically, machines are not going to basically take anything away from people and industry that we have now. I mean, if you look at the historical patterns, in the industrial age, there was a group called the Luddites who burned looms because they believed that these machines were evil. And at the end of the day, what happened was the weavers developed more unique patterns while the machines did the easy to replicate and easy to mass produce patterns. Similarly, when ATMs first got popular, most bank tellers were afraid that they would lose their jobs. But what happened instead was these bank tellers offer more personalized, more human human interactions with people, as opposed to just being here's your money and yeah. So at the end of the day, it's really an exciting time. I would say that anything exciting is also a little bit scary because we can't really say for sure how AI is gonna evolve and how industry is gonna evolve with it. What I do know is why I started Ruma Rocket was because I believed in basically the potential that I saw in people. And what I saw at the industry and in schools at that time was you looked at people and you defined them by their backgrounds. Went to a good school, went to a good college, got a good job. And what I realized was not everybody falls under those boxes. There are people who are just as talented, just as unique, and just as driven, who don't who don't fall under these boxes. And I wanted to build a process that would be able to find and get the most out of people like this. And for me, the AI age and the advancements that we're experiencing right now are about basically bringing out talents and people like this and making them the mainstream. Basically building a society where creativity and the ability to create and build and inspire something that's valued and something that's important and a cornerstone to basically creating a new kind of society and a new kind of economy.
Well said from a very, very young entrepreneur. Okay, if you can provide your, if you can give our startups, and especially the ones, the new, the millennials also who are planning to develop or launch their own startups. So what are your advice to them as to, experiencing struggles, and they could also be the graduating students who are pitching their thesis to their teachers, and they may also experience the same experience that you had. What's your word of advice to them?
Basically, when I wasn't a very good student in school, and 1 year I failed out, and the teacher told my mom, maybe Kathleen isn't cut out for this school, you should consider transferring her. But at that moment, my mom gave me a choice. She said, you can either walk away from this or you can stick to it and change their opinion of you. So I stuck to it, and the next year I was one of the top students in the class. And for me, that was one of the most important life lessons I learned. At the end of the day, everything is changeable. You can be a better version of yourself if you keep trying and if you keep moving and if you keep basically pushing and becoming a better day by day. And that's really something that not every day, we can't expect to win all the time, but at the end of the day, it's our failures that teach us the most.
Perfect. That's really very inspiring. That's the CEO and founder of RumaRocket.com. Thank you very much, Kathleen, for joining the show. Stay with us. We will still be back with our term of the week and our code of the week when open for business return. Stay tuned. In our term of the week, you take a refresher of business terms to make you updated, more informed, and ready to make smarter business decisions. Our term of the week is AI, or artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to think like humans and mimic their actions. The term may also be applied to any machine that exhibits traits associated with a human mind, such as learning and problem solving. The ideal characteristic of artificial intelligence is its ability to rationalize and take actions that have the best chance of achieving a specific goal. The goals of artificial intelligence include learning, reasoning, and perception. AI is continuously evolving to benefit many different industries and uses a cross-disciplinary approach based in mathematics, computer science, linguistics, psychology, and more. And our quote of the week is from Seth Godin. He said, The only thing worse than starting something and failing is not starting something. Join us again next Saturday, 5 p.m. Philippine time for another episode of Open for Business, where we discuss business information, deliver the latest business news to keep you informed and open for business and be ahead of the curve from vision to action. You're on Facebook Live on Eagle News, and you can watch us again in the video section of Eagle News FB page and on Eaglenewslive.com. Also visit postinglive.com for news and updates on Open for Business. Catch me also every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on Net25's Eagle News International as I report more business news here and around the world. For Open for Business, this is Cesar Vallejos. Have a great day.
Open for Business was presented by Eagle Broadcasting Corporation and Globe My Business. Create your success.